I heard Brittany was in this.
Oh, good.
Quite some. Fun here.
Ella does watch sometimes, so could be on at my house.
That was a memo.
Yeah, it is.
She likes watching Raw Celebrities. Violet's, your Violet's mom, you're not the one, your Violet's
Yes.
mom, so.
It's very embarrassing at school when the teachers ask, does anybody know who the mayor is? Mom.
Four docs is down, it's weird.
Ella loves it when Nate, because we're their business buddies, and Nate goes to the classroom and she knows Nate, and he's a celebrity, so.
I feel the same. It's great.
You know, anybody can be a celebrity by joining this crusade,
Yeah, absolutely.
if they
She's
would.
a little young, but.
Oh, here, there's one right here. This Billy.
He's not here.
Billy's coming, isn't he?
Yeah,
Farther on.
and he's got one, right?
Yep. Seems to be working okay right now.
What's that?
So it seems to be working okay right now.
Thank you.
Oh, you know, I can trust it.
And that's exactly why we printed it off.
It's a little bit of
Oh, it
my-
does seem to be.
Yeah,
pretty
like
quick.
it's traveling pretty quickly. Better safe than sorry.
Mhm.
Mhm. So we're down by 10 with 3 minutes left in the second.
Basketball.
That's the region number 1 seed.
Yeah. Friday night felt good though,
Yeah, it did.
for the girls.
Till it didn't
Yeah.
for the boys.
I wasn't there for that one.
Well, now we know who to blame.
No, I was waiting for that.
You
I was waiting for
survived,
Sam, he knows better.
Yes, but, afterwards, I'm gonna have you circulate, right? So I'll notarize them for you, I'll just sign them, and notarize them.
Hey, Bill. Good. You wanna do the last piece of jigsaw puzzle?
Sure. Move it over here.
Billy, did you get everything you needed?
I hope so.
Maybe you get one extra, I haven't checked on that yet.
Yeah. I think I got a few extra.
Yeah, looks like you did.
What did I need, 24?
Yeah, I said probably 30, so you've done 34, so you're,
Hopefully.
yeah. It reminds me, I
Did you
should
check
get,
them all?
That's what I
You
just
check
told
them all?
him,
I didn't.
I think that, I don't know if Matt updated.
Repeat.
I need to
There was
update
one
my
year
address,
that
yeah.
he signed mine and it was invalid, and I'm like, really?
That's right.
Really?
I remember, I think that was your first one.
That's a, not awesome.
It was so long, it was stuck in the phone.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
or Academy.
Academy.
Cut it to 7.5.
Huh?
7.5.
Oh, did it?
I
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. First up is additions to and or approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, agenda is approved as presented. Next up, visitors to be heard. Anybody wishing to speak has 2 minutes up at the podium. Seeing none, we'll go on to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
The motion and a second, any discussion there? Hearing none, we'll do roll call. Mauer.
Aye.
Welch.
Aye.
Swear.
Aye.
Bowers.
Aye.
Doherty.
Aye.
Right, consent agenda is approved. Moving right along, old business, ordinance 648, amended livestock permits. This is the second reading.
Mayor and council, second reading of this ordinance here that removes the council from deciding every chicken permit that comes in front of the city and moves it to the zoning administrator or city administrator there. With no changes made since the first reading, I recommend motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, any discussion there? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Second reading ordinance 648 is approved. On to new business. First up, garbage hauler license.
Billy, you weren't here for this, but board docs has been a little finicky, so it's not pulling up. You do have a printed copy. Okay. Mayor and council received a late copy of, or a late application here for the garbage hauler license from Ruse Sanitation. Received 3 of the renewals in December. We hadn't received anything from Ruse. We did receive this on January 9. Lincoln County approved the license on January 23 after their deadline as well. Application and supporting materials are complete. From a technical perspective, Ruse has been collecting and hauling in violation of our ordinances for the month of January without explanation or communication. It does allow the city council to revoke the license for violation of laws, regulations, and stipulations. So my official recommendation is a motion to deny here, but you're not going to offend anybody if you approve. If you do didn't vote to deny the license, I would recommend that we give them at least a certain amount of time for those customers to make a transition. I don't think they have a ton of customers in town. I think it's our newest hauler, so.
Has there been any contact, did you say?
Not since, no, the only contact we've had is the application.
Do they have any collection in town?
They do have a few, yeah. I think I've seen maybe 2 or 3 of their bins, their garbage bins around town. Well, certainly not a lot of them.
Right.
But if I remember correctly, when they applied for their first license, they were looking to simply expand their services out to a farther territory than what they're currently providing. They're starting with Lennox, I think Chancellor, they have Worthing, you know?
They do not.
Okay.
RDS is Worthing.
We have no idea why they've been, like, they didn't think that they were like, compliant.
No, everybody was sent the same information back in November.
They've got it backdated as though they completed it on December 1st. So there was they either knew they did or filled it out and forgot to set it.
Yeah. Either one is possible.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't really want to leave residents in a lurch if they're counting on these folks.
That's kind of where I'm at too, like if it was just a miscommunication in their office maybe. you know.
Entirely possible.
Now yet how some people are, like, I like my garbage hauler, and obviously some people in town probably like theirs.
Yeah.
I don't wanna pull that away. I think, maybe just, in my opinion, just let them keep operating. And maybe just kind of hey, we're watching it, you're on the fence
Yeah,
here.
heads up for next year.
Yeah,
maybe.
let's make sure.
Stern admonishment vibes.
There you go.
Wow.
I'll make a motion to approve, Ruse Sanitation garbage hauler license.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve. Any more discussion there?
Could we do like a follow-up to try to get them on board?
every so many months, or, I don't know.
Just make sure they're good to go every few months. We can.
I mean, once they finally come compliant. then I
Yeah.
guess,
I mean, they'll, once awarding the license tonight, they'll be fully compliant again. And I don't think I've certainly not had any complaints or any issues with them.
Maybe just letting them know that, you know, they were.
We're paying
close to-
attention.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were close to not getting it, so you need to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can do.
All right, we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Rue's sanitation is approved. Next up, ordinance 645, supplemental budget.
Actually, it's 649, sorry.
Oh, it is 9 up there.
I did
It's back
do
here.
649.
Okay.
So, as you know, we did a supplemental budget in December, and it was my error. A few of them I miscalculated on the salaries. So, if you guys all have the ordinance there, and it shows the amounts in the departments that need the extra.
There are also some professional services, things
Yeah.
like that came in late.
Right, and the museum one, that one came in late December or January when we got that one, so I missed that one. And then we had some repairs with Brian with his streets and stuff. And the other thing was the utilities, the electricity that came through in January for December. So,
What's the 205,000?
oh, that is the second penny. So, some of the parking lot and different things that came in, remember when we did them all at the end of the year
Mhm.
in
Final
December?
payout.
They were,
Yeah, I missed that. So, I mean, I didn't include it. So,
Okay.
those were all part of that. The drainage fund was for the Poplar drainage for engineering fees. I didn't get those until
Looks like
January.
basically a timing thing.
It is a timing thing.
It is. And overall, I mean, you know, I wasn't happy with the first supplemental we had. This doesn't make it any better.
No.
But overall, you know, we ended the year really well, you know, with a, you know, general fund net gain of almost $75,000. Second penny had a net gain, or the fund balance increased by almost $300,000. So overall, we're in really good shape yet. Just, you know, we know that planning is probably what needs to happen a little bit better next year, so, or this year, I should say. And we've put some of those things in place already with POs and a couple signature processes as well.
Motion approved.
Second.
a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? All right, we'll do roll call. Doherty.
Aye.
Swear.
Aye.
Bowers.
Aye.
Welch.
Aye.
Mauer.
Aye.
All right, ordinance 649, supplemental budget, first reading is
First reading.
approved. A City of Lennox digital sign.
Mayor and Council, I'm not gonna ask for motion tonight or for action tonight, because I received a late quote from Decoy Signs over across the river in Iowa. But you can, if you can take a minute between now and the next meeting to review, or even now, take a look at what's out there and see if there's something that really draws your eye. There's a big range in prices here, from I think 22 on the low end to 65 or 66 on the high end. So the one that came in late today, if I'm gonna get a true comparison, we need to look at, you know, the cost for concrete, we need to look at the cost for the stone front or brick masonry on one of them, a couple other items there. So I wanna take some time between now and that next meeting and get those extra numbers in there, so we make sure we have a clear number, and that we're not just estimating off you. We do know that we're gonna have to take electricity to that site. That's gonna cost, we think, about $10,000. We don't have a drilled down number on that yet, but it'll have to come, where was it from, Brian? All the way from, yeah, it's from Hanish Electric, so. They're thinking 10,000 should cover it, but we budgeted 65. Certainly we can meet that number with several of these options. So if there's one that strikes you as being a favorite, just if you can let me know.
I know when we originally talked about this, we discussed communication and the issue with that. And I know public communication is very important. I'm concerned with the price and just some of the budget discussions we've had this year and the ROI that we're gonna get for 65,000 plus taking electricity there. I feel like it can become, you know, upwards of 75 to 100 after, you know, things that we don't consider with the sign. I know it's very important, but I do think we do a good job now of communicating. I think there's maybe some other ways we can get creative and look at this. If this is an amenity, and is it something we really need right now? So it's kind of where I'm at with that. And
I
then-
would love to see our enrollment rate on our app. And is there a way to measure how many folks have notifications on?
We can check on the notifications. We've got about 500 or 550 downloads of the app so far. We don't know if those are all
In town.
50739 or are they, you know, right in Sioux Falls, T. Harrisburg, those kind of things.
Right, that's been a game changer for us, and it's been a
Yeah.
great way to communicate with our community that we didn't have when this conversation started. So it does make this,
Fair point.
to Brittany's point, less relevant.
Right.
Where if we're able to communicate with our residents through the app, is a marquee sign just trying to be 1990?
I also, one of my other concerns is I know we see these signs all over Sioux Falls in very busy intersections, but right smack dab on Boynton and 44, or 17, right? Any concern, I guess, has there been discussion with law enforcement about the safety of that intersection and having a sign right there?
That's not typically a conversation we have with law enforcement because we have zoning restrictions that set up where we can have those signs. Now, that being said, most of those signs aren't digital marquee signs. And you've got, I'm trying to think of any of them we have in town. Maybe the scrolling sign in front of Lennox Insurance would be the only one. Other than
think
that,
Dave's
they're all
has a little
stationary
one.
signs. you know.
Dave's has a little one, but it's further down like by Sunshine. So where I envision this is it gonna block vision?
No, it won't block any views,
It
but I can see it
distracts.
being a distraction.
Do both bids have both sides?
It won't do double-sided signs, yeah.
And they're Wi-Fi enabled from what I could read in the information,
Yeah,
so you
we'd
can
be,
change
we'd
it
be
from
able
here.
to change them from here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they use a cellular signal.
How much load?
4,000 watts.
Seriously?
That's what they've got called out. I can't tell you if that's daily, monthly, or what.
These are big signs. I mean, they're, one of them's 8x5, give or take.
Yeah,
I was just wondering if solar would be an option, but probably not with that kind of load.
well, in any event, we have most of the information.
A lot of work.
Right.
I guess it would be good to see, like I said, that last one we just got today, kind of all wrapped
Yeah,
up.
we got one late this afternoon, so.
And then we can have those real numbers.
I mean, I get what Brittany and Bill are saying, but, and I'm kind of in the same thinking, but we also gotta realize that probably half of our population is in the 1990s,
Not
Well,
using the app.
you know, so maybe getting those numbers and seeing what the actuals are on that app,
Yeah.
hits on the app and actual users.
We can get, I would like to see if maybe we can get who is using our app and how often and what are they accessing? Like, are they navigating to certain pages? We know what our use statistics look like on Facebook. It's predominantly females over the age of 45. That hasn't changed over the years. So, you know, are we sufficiently hitting that audience or sufficiently hitting the audience under 45? You know, making sure that we're dispersing our information to as many groups as possible in an efficient manner, so.
Is there any way, speaking of being stuck in the 90s, but when my mom was city administrator in Ipswich, finance officer, they had like a broadcast that had a tracker and it was a TV channel that you turned to and it gave, and so, I mean, we used it all the time, maybe because my mom this one who sets it up, but just, I mean, is that fairly inexpensive? Is it an option? I know people use like Netflix and whatever, but I mean, we watched the Super Bowl on just regular CBS last night because we don't have cable. So just something maybe to consider.
We used to have
Yes,
Um,
fast.
digital access through Vaxt. It became a bit of a headache, and I can't remember exactly why.
It didn't work for one.
No, I mean, it was constantly no.
Wouldn't this be kind of similar? You're inputting the information, it has to, we're making sure that it's spitting it out and connecting properly. Like, wouldn't it kind of be the same issues?
I think there were technological issues with how they were distributing the information. I don't even know if they have a cable access channel anymore, do they?
I don't.
Go.
Midco used to, but I don't think they have it anymore.
So when it stopped working, we didn't even know it stopped working. It stopped working for like 6 months.
Yeah.
We didn't hear a boot from anyone. Like nobody complained, nobody called, nobody said, hey, I can't watch this. So our assumption was that nobody was using it whatsoever, and I've never heard anyone.
Yeah, I think if you go that route, half the town, I mean, I guess probably, half the town probably streams.
So we
A
don't-
quarter probably does Midco and a quarter probably does Bass, so.
We know that our cable franchise fee, what we collect in revenue, has gone down every year, including this year, or last year, I imagine, so. Cable usage continues to drop, we know that.
So it's not like a free channel, like you can't just turn to it
No.
like the
No, you have to have
CBS
cable.
Fox getting your local news, it
You'd have to
would
have
fall
cable.
under that?
You'd have to have cable for it.
Well, we can revisit after you get
Get a little more information.
Yep.
numbers.
Thank you.
All right,
Do we need a motion to table?
I think that didn't
Not
require
really.
any action.
No.
Okay.
mutual aid agreement with Parker Ambulance. You're on deck.
You guys have a mutual aid agreement with Parker there. Parker, we've been doing ALS intercept with Parker for probably about two and a half years now. And they came to us asking for basically a mutual aid agreement. If you read through there, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It's gonna help dispatch out as well. So if they need an ALS intercept, they're automatically gonna call us instead of calling around trying to find somebody else. So it's gonna make things quicker on that end as well. And then it just establishes the cost that they pay us when we do that.
Mayor and council, you also know an email from City Attorney Brett Lovren provides his feedback on the agreement. We did not change anything after this email, just so you know that that's, so you have his feedback as anything that might be an issue, but we figured that was not much of an issue at all.
So
I
this
think my
200
biggest concern, I'm sorry, Stacy, but, we've had discussions before about access and, you know, use of the ambulance, use of our employees, and sometimes you might be out on 2 calls, so if you have, is there a provision for only having 1 ambulance go to Parker? What if they need 2, and then now there's nothing in Lennox, you
That's
know?
why we have mutual aid. So if we happen to be on an ALS intercept and we don't have a second truck, then we call Canton and they come over and help us out. That's how we do it now with any mass casualty, anything like that. You know, even if, let's say
Even though
Parker
we have a
doesn't,
couple times a year that
Yeah.
Canton comes here.
and let's say Parker's not even needing the ALS intercept. They've got an accident, they need 3 ambulances. We're going over, and we have a call here, Canton comes over and helps us out.
The ALS has to account for quite a few calls, I would assume.
Last year Parker, I think from them, I wanna say it was like 12 or 15.
And then what about in Lennox here too, because we would need, what if Canton doesn't have an ALS provider?
ALS has ALS.
Okay.
They actually have ALS more than we do. And we're probably 85 to 90% of the time.
So you don't have concerns with access to our citizens with approving this? I'll make a motion to approve the
Second.
mutual aid agreement with Parker.
Motion and a second, any discussion?
What has our rates been to this point when this occurs?
The way an ALS intercept works is a little different than a standard call. A standard call, we go out, we pick up the patient, we take them to the hospital, we bill the insurance company. When there's an ALS intercept like this, we meet them on the side of the road someplace. We grab our bags, our equipment, we jump in the back of their truck, and we go to the hospital with them. So we don't bill the patient's insurance, we bill the ambulance service direct. They pay us $200, and they bill the patient's insurance and collect on that.
That's been the rate.
Yep, and that's been the rate we've been for the last 2-3 years.
Is that adequate for services rendered?
I believe so.
Yeah, it's really just our time,
And a little bit of supplies.
and so you're looking at, what do we figure for a call, 2 hours in general?
In general, for an ALS intercept, we're probably looking
Yeah.
at more like an hour and 15 minutes. It takes a little bit less time. Because when we meet up, they've already got the patient packaged and they're partway to Sioux Falls already. So that takes some time out of it for us.
I mean, depending on what supplies you use, every call's different, obviously, but, it certainly covers staff time and should cover most supplies, I would imagine.
And this is, like you said, basically how you have been operating, it's just we're
Formalize
It's a
it.
formal
Formalized.
agreement.
Right. Is there a rate elevation structure that I'm not seeing?
There is not one built in there, no. I mean, if we decide a year down the road, we just go back to them and ask for an increase.
Okay.
Yeah. We're doing this currently with Parker. We do ALS intercepts for Marion, Hurley, Centerville, Pearsford occasionally. So it happens fairly regularly. We're just fortunate enough to have the medics and the ALS services available where they don't.
That impressed me most out of this whole thing.
So,
Nice.
All right, any other items there? We have a motion and a second. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, approved. Thank you, Ellen.
thank you.
Oh, you're up next, Dan. South Dakota Department of Health EMS project overview.
Awesome. Thank you guys for the time. Nate wanted me to kind of fill you in a little bit what happened in 2023, but specifically the regionalization surveys. He said I had an hour and a half. That's a whole month.
He was wrong.
Tip off at that
You
end.
didn't pull.
2023 was actually a banner year for EMS in South Dakota, and because of it, we're being watched from across the nation. The governor gave us $20 million just to the EMS industry, which is unheard of. Life packs, we each transporting service got a new life pack. They're $30,000 a piece. We got 2 of them handed to us. Well, $60,000 of equipment that was handed to us, which is awesome. And that also includes 8 years of service. So they come out and service that for 8 years at no cost. So, huge. We also got the Avell telehealth in the back of one of our ambulances. We don't have it in both, we just have it in the one for right now. But that allows us to call up and have an ER physician on the other side of the screen. You can see our patient, we can talk to him, we can bounce ideas off, and we can take care of those patients that are critical if we don't have the services or we don't have the skills available to do that. So that's pretty huge as well. And then the last thing there is the $8 million regionalization survey and grant proposal. They spent about $500,000 doing a survey about EMS across the state, and that's resulting in another $7.5 million that will be available for grants. Some of the information they came out with, the survey is good, it's not groundbreaking. A lot of this stuff we've seen in other surveys, we've seen before, we knew. If you look on the PowerPoint there I gave you, PowerPoints are not my forte. I'm sorry, there's a spelling error on there, I apologize. Their change, what they base a call off of is if you get response in 30 minutes, that's considered on time. Anything longer than 30 minutes is considered late or not on time. We have a response time of 4.5 minutes in Lennox. We're a semi-urban / rural territory. According to Medicare, we are considered urban. Oh, that's an odd thing.
Based
If
on
we go-
metropolitan area.
Yep. And if we go to Chancellor, we're super rural. It's just really strange how it works. But right now, there's 7 districts. Most of the late calls are happening in districts 5, 6, and 7. Are your guys' PowerPoints in color?
Yes.
And those are, mine is not in color, I apologize. Yellow, orange, and green, I believe.
These three?
West.
Yes.
Yep, all
Yellow,
western.
orange, and green, they're all western. So, I mean, that's kind of showing, especially you get down there to the southeast of Rapid City, given a couple of reservations, there's a lot of areas out there that are virtually uncovered. I spent 2 years working in Rosebud. We went 45 miles one way to get patients, and that was a regular occurrence. So, depending on what's going on, that can be life and death pretty quickly. So we're very fortunate here, as much service territory as we do cover, we have a lot less response time type of deal. District 5, which is the yellow one, or excuse me, the 7, the yellow one, in 5 years, they're gonna be down to 2 services, which is scary.
Yeah.
The study is really good at taking a look at what's going on. Not a lot of great answers on how to do it. I think really what we're gonna come into is some regionalized services that are like countywide type of thing. We've got some countywide services and they even go larger than single counties, so double counties to cover some of this stuff. 5 years ago, we had 136 ambulance services. We're down to 122 now. So we lost 14 in the last 5 years. And that's gonna continue to go down. You can see on that chart there, it just shows how payments are figured out. I've talked to you before about payments. You can have a $1,500 ambulance bill. We're not gonna get paid $1,500 for it, depending on what insurance rates are. Our Medicare our Medicaid is gonna be $262 out of maybe $1,500 bill. Our Medicaid is gonna be $607 out of $1,500 bill. So what we bill isn't always what we get back, and that's across the industry. 650 transports is what's considered break even for a single ambulance. Last year we did right at 300. There's only 20 services in the state of South Dakota that transport more than 650 patients a year.
Wow.
Because if we go to a call, we take care of a patient, they don't go to the hospital, we can't bill for that call. It's just the way the system works. So 650 transports to break even.
Alan, outside of the metropolitan and micropolitan areas, what other services would be counted in that 20? I mean, we know Sioux Falls, Rapid, Aberdeen, Brookings, Yankton, Vermillion, all those. What else?
Probably Huron. I believe Spink County, it's more than just, it's larger than actually just Spink County. They do like 1,200 a year. They're not all transports, obviously, like 1,200 calls a year. The reservations are gonna be over that 650 transports calls.
Okay.
But yeah.
Right.
Like I said, we're doing about 300 transports here. And last year we hit just under 600 calls. Just under 500 calls, excuse me.
So what makes South Dakota best in class where other states are looking at what we're doing? Is the funding?
Just the funding from the governor. That's just unheard of in the EMS industry. Governors out there aren't just handing out funds and handing out equipment like she's been doing, which is great. And we'll take all the equipment and funds she's gonna give us.
Of course.
So, the results of the survey, same stuff I've been talking about. Decreasing staffing, increasing call volume, decreasing volunteerism, increasing training requirements, and a lack of funding. That's what the study found. Nothing new, unfortunately. There's like I said, $7.5 million available for grants. There's 2 grant periods, one in March, one in August. The money has to be used for regionalization purposes. So we can't use it to pay salaries. You can't use it to buy an ambulance. They gotta be self-sustaining programs, which makes sense. So the money goes to something. We have been in discussions with 2 different projects, mostly to the north and east of us. One is a regionalized protocol system. So everybody that will be on this system is gonna have the same set of protocols. All of Minnehaha County, possibly some more here in Lincoln County and north of there as well. Great, if we ever end up mass casualties, we're all working on the same set of protocols. We're all treating patients the exact same way. It also comes with apps, which cost money, and all that stuff is gonna be free to us. It doesn't go through. Second one is a regionalized transport service. Right now, I came to you here a few months ago and asked if we could do some long-range transfers if we had another ambulance available. That's where we make the money. The money is in your hospital transports because it's guaranteed funding. And this regionalized would be all these ambulance services that come together. We have an agreement that, let's say, Sioux Falls has a patient that needs to go to Rochester. They can't take it, they can call us up, they can call Del Rapids up, they can call Hartford up, or Humboldt up, and say, hey, can you guys take this transfer? So we can still get the patients where they need to go and actually get some more revenue coming in. So that's the other one that's kind of in the works right now. Both of them are very early stage talks, but some uses for some of that grant funding.
Is there a way to amortize wear and tear on our ambulances with all of this regionalized running and have that be a part of our grant funding? I know you can't use it to replace an ambulance, but this all costs money to run your vehicles, mileage and such.
You could probably, well, we're what, 2 years out?
Yeah.
Needing a new one, we'll keep the frame if I remember right.
We'll keep the box.
Keep the box,
Yeah,
new
replace
frame,
the chassis.
new chat, yeah. As an operational expense, but not a cash expense, you might be able to include that in the budget. It all depends on how they write the grant regulations, I suppose.
And that-
Because it can't take cash to pay for an ambulance.
But depreciation's not a new ambulance.
Right. It's just the operational expense, so.
Right. If we could find a way to get that scripted, that'd be a nice way to.
Are they done with promulgation of the rules on this?
Not completely, I don't believe.
Let's maybe talk to
I'll give Marty a call.
lobbyists.
So, what's the crystal ball for EMS in South Dakota, nationwide? Who knows? We're gonna have to go to regionalized services, which we kind of are already. You know, we're covering multiple towns, multiple areas. I fully believe that within the next 10 to 15 years, EMS is gonna go to a fully paid service. Not just here, everywhere, just to make them survive. Because these communities that don't have the people to do it, they're all working jobs to make ends meet for their families. If they're trying to do this on top of that, it's just not gonna happen. I also see that we're gonna have to try to find some more funding revenues, which are gonna mean these long-range transfers, because you make the money on the mileage. You have $26 a mile. If we go to Rochester, the mileage bill is pretty nice. It's loaded miles, not empty, so it's one way.
Wow.
But still, $26 a mile to Rochester helps pay for some of that wear and tear in that ambulance too. Also, interfacility transports, other words, and then community paramedicine when it finally becomes legal and law. That's another way for us to bring in revenue. So our paramedics could go out. It's a little different than community health worker because we're not really providing health care in the homes. It's more of a social worker type program, but providing mental care within the homes, and we can bill for that as well. So that's another way we can bring some more funding in as soon as that all comes down the channels and is legal.
There are about a dozen different conversations going on in here, this legislative session with regard to ambulances and EMS, and whether it's air transport versus ground transport, or how to fund certain aspects of the grants. I mean, this has been a prime issue for us for years. And I think for several ambulances, even though they may not have been as vocal about it or acknowledged it as clearly as we have, but it's been an issue for us for a long time. It's something there's going to have to be a reckoning in the next 5 to 10 years on how this is actually going to work, especially in our more rural counties. So. Thankfully, Alan is the president of District 1, right? No?
State president.
State president, no, that's right. My apologies. And condolences.
I've been out to Pier twice already to.
And going again this week, if I remember right.
Next week.
It's a lovely trip, isn't it?
It is a beautiful trip in the middle of winter.
My favorite.
I think it's worth knowing that there are legislators and other stakeholders that are actively discussing, not just the legislation, but their concerns with how EMS is provided in South Dakota, because it is such a drastically needed service, but not a required service for anyone. You look at what we were talking at dinner the other night about how the districts are set up. Should the state step in and take some sort of authority on how those regions are set up for each ambulance service? We have no idea how they're set up. I think we asked Harold at the Citizens Academy, and he's got probably the clearest recollection of anybody in the state of how they're done. And when they were set up, they probably made sense, but at this point in time, they don't necessarily make sense. So, for example, Chancellor being cut in half by a service. And we serve the east side, and Parker serves the west.
And Reed is 3 services.
No kidding.
Yeah.
There you go. So,
Well, it's 3 different counties
It's a 3
in the
different
same
services.
town.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you, Alan. All right, item F, architecture RFP.
Mayor and Council, you'll recall that we plan to replace the roof and windows at the museum this year, as well as conduct a structural assessment on the band shell. We are certain the band shell is going to need an architect or a structural engineer for assessment. The museum project is probably not going to require them in terms of structural use, But in terms of, it's a fairly complicated project. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. So we have to comply with that, and it is a larger project. It's also large enough that it meets subject to South Dakota bidding requirements. So with all that in mind, I think it's reasonable to search for some experts on these matters and form a request for proposals. So this is this RFP that you have in front of you was based off of the utility rate RFP from 2023. Services include bid preparation and management, project construction and administration, and architectural assessment. The schedule of this RFP has us proceeding by mid-May, which should provide us plenty of time to get the bid out there and prepare the work for construction year. So my estimate on this is probably 20% of project cost. So probably up to $30,000. We do have funding available in second penny if we need it, but I think it's premature to say, well, we can or cannot do that at this point until we get some of these numbers in. City attorney has reviewed the RFP and provided feedback, which is included in your executive content in the packet. I recommend a motion to publish.
So moved.
Second.
Motion a second, discussion.
Give it to them.
Pardon?
We second at the same time, I said let Bill have it.
I give it to you.
Okay.
I don't
I
know
appointed
if
Brittany immediately, so.
I don't know if I put the message from Brett in the printed packets.
Hopefully they take a deep dive on the museum, because I need some TLC.
Yeah, we have an old, I mean, if you're interested, we can add a new structural assessment to the museum as well. It's probably been, I bet it's been 12 years since we've had one done.
We need to.
So it might not be I mean, if you want, we can revise this to include that.
I'm not able to access the executive content.
Yeah.
I can't pull it up either.
I can't either, one moment.
Do we need to make a motion to enter exec to have this conversation?
We can either do that or I can email it to everyone briefly. I have it ready to pulled up here.
Hit it.
Whenever we're gonna try to download.
Oops.
Oh, I suppose I have to unblock this Nathan Vanderplant.
Who's that
I wasn't
guy?
gonna worry until I started getting bounce backs. Should be on its way to you folks. Wow.
There we go. I just got.
Did you say you emailed it to us?
Yep.
Okay. Do you need to make it bigger? I'll do that.
That was actually attached to.
What's that?
That's a
Yeah,
different
ambulance
one that
service.
was the same.
Oh, was it?
Printout.
Got it. Thank you.
Oh,
That makes a little more sense now with this.
Oh, I see that now.
oh, yeah.
Yep. So, same feedback for the, pretty sure it's the same language we used in
So we had a motion and a second, and then is there any discussion?
Nope.
Further discussion there? All right, so we're just advertising, so no money, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, let's put it out there and see what we get. On to personnel, recreation manager.
Mayor and council, this is just a discussion item, just wanting some direction, making sure you're okay with the direction we're going on this. We've employed a part-time recreation manager for the last 3 years. We've been discussing some options for making that position more manageable. So Trey Manitz is the second person to hold that position, following Steve Hale. Prior to that, we had a full-time Parks and Rec manager. And prior to that, programs were run by volunteers from the park board. and occasionally with the assistance of a Parks and Recreation Administrator as an independent contractor. That was before my time, but I think some of you were either on Park Board or council maybe, when we did have that position, so any input about that is certainly welcome. In discussions with the current manager, we know there are some logistical challenges in keeping this as an hourly, non-exempt position. Hours are unpredictable, especially during registration and program administration. So you really, during those timeframes, I compare the position very similar to mine. Those calls, texts, emails, those things are happening at any given time. Whereas, to be compliant with FLSA, we need him to log in and clock all those hours. Difficult thing to do if it's a minute or two here and there. So it's not a position that qualifies as an exempt or salaried position. So I'm just presenting this today for discussion and direction. Would appreciate your thoughts, specifically on whether returning to using an independent contractor would still be Mr. Manetz for these services would be worthwhile. There's still some concerns. He has some concerns about concessions for this summer and whether that should remain under this position or be a different higher position. I don't know if we have any great answers for that. All kinds of towns do something different. So for the time being, we're proposing to keep that the same unless some other proposal comes through.
So I would first like to see the concessions discussion maybe fall back to the park board and have them have that conversation with Trey. Like if they believe it's of value, I'd like their input on that and, what he thinks about that and if they feel like they can fill it or if it should.
We can have that discussion at the park board next week. Just their general thoughts on concessions. Where does it belong?
Well, just that whole topic. I mean, unless someone here feels really strongly about that, I think we can give them that authority to, that's kind of part of what they're established for. And then for independent contractor, are you referring to the stipend position? Like it was
There wasn't an actual contract before.
well, I think we called it an independent contractor, but
Yeah.
like they weren't their own, that's just not, I believe that was on our
Yeah.
end. Like he or those individuals weren't their own, like LLC, they didn't have their own
No.
business, it was just the way we were able to pay them, I believe, from the finance officer's direction. And we
Yeah.
went
It would be
to,
similar, though. We would have, I think we would have an agreement in place.
we went to hourly because it was difficult for us to determine, like it was,
Hours
it varied,
every-
it varied every year and every month. And so we felt like, are we underpaying, are we overpaying?
Yeah.
And we struggled with that quite a bit because they seemed to work a lot more than maybe what we were paying them. And it really needed to be full-time. And so then,
We've got a good history of what we've paid over the last few years, so I think we've got at
She
least
brings up a
base
good
level.
point when she says, when the direction that was coming and that they're an employee or that you wanted them to be an employee versus an independent
Right.
contractor.
Yes.
Independent contractor really needs to be somebody who, has their own, tools.
insurance.
Yep, their own,
Yep.
yep, all of that stuff. They're not really, they have no set hours. You can't dictate the hours to them, that type of thing. So,
Yeah, there are times where we need to dictate hours.
so it's really kind of a hard position, to really say that it could be independent contractor, because I don't think it could. I think that if wage and hour came in, they would disagree.
Yeah.
So could we not make it a part-time, like leave him as is? Why can't we do a stipend instead of,
A stipend is meant to cover, under FLSA, it's meant to cover, room, board.
like
Per
we
diem,
do
that kind of
stipends
stuff.
at work for like somebody who, right. So it would be like a PRN role at a hospital. I mean, that's how I see
Yeah.
it. Why couldn't we treat it like that, where he's an as-needed employee that gets paid a
Yeah.
sum of 10,000 or whatever it is a year, but we pay it out over 4 months or however that looks?
Let's throw this out there for some discussion. There's an HR consultant firm in Sioux Falls, and I can't remember the name.
Okay.
It's on the tip of my tongue because I just talked to T about it. I wonder if we can't on for some more specific questions around the FLSA requirements for wage.
Well, we have that HR.
That's right, we can do that.
Or would
So
they
we
go
can,
on
you want me to
well.
call them and see? Okay,
Yeah, maybe we can schedule a conference with them.
okay.
Brett might have information on that too.
Yeah, we've gone a few times to Brett on a couple of things, and I will certainly include him on this as well. When it gets down to the exempt and non-exempt, I think, 5-10 years ago, it was a lot simpler. But with changes in, especially the exempt overtime requirements that we had 6 years ago, this just got a whole heck of a lot more complicated. So I think we're trying to make sure that whatever peg we use fits in a round hole, and making sure it's the right size, so.
I think the issue of, the hourly and changing it to the stipend, or going to hourly from stipend, was because we didn't have data on how many hours, and it seemed like based on the person was kind of the work they were putting in too, and so that made it challenging, but now that we have that data it's been, 6 years probably?
At least 4.
Cause we
Well,
had,
2020 is when we created the position,
Right. And
the
then-
full-time position.
it was it was when Jerry was still here, we
Okay.
had the position hourly.
Before Justin came on board.
Yeah. Yeah, when I started, we didn't have anybody specific for it, it was just the park board, if I remember right. I think you were on park board then. But
And we
everything
just
was
kinda
essentially
split
run
up.
by park board, you were running,
Yeah, I would.
somebody would help with concessions, somebody would run registrations.
We all split it, and I wouldn't wanna put that on
Wouldn't
everybody.
recommend that,
That was a
no.
lot for everybody.
Are, on a different note, I hate changing the subject in the middle, my apologies. If you're not done, I'll wait.
No, I'm done. Thanks, Bob.
We got onto concessions and my brain started racing. We had LBSA asking last year about taking over concessions. With it being labor intensive and very difficult to schedule, have we considered that opportunity yet again and let them raise the funds?
Yeah, there was some park board discussion about that. I want to say it was the last meeting, I'll have to go back to our minutes and take a look, but I think they opted out of that discussion.
Fair enough.
Most recent information I have is from T. Trade is obviously familiar with their recreation manager, having been a resident there. They contracted out. I don't know if they, do an RFP or how they do it, but it's just somebody that runs a concession stand.
We used to do that, right?
Way back,
A
yeah.
long time
Yeah,
ago.
that's probably 10 years ago at least. So,
If our park board has a grip on it, fantastic. I'm
Yeah.
glad they're looking at the options and what's necessary.
yeah, and it's not, nobody's going into it looking at it lightly. We still would argue that our net gain from concessions every year is minimal.
Mhm.
And, I know, what you see in the finance report says is one piece of it. It's far from the full story of what we actually pull in, so.
Well, it was profitable at one time, but that was with a bunch of volunteers.
Yeah,
You're at free labor.
Right,
exactly.
makes the math a little easier.
But I also think it was open way more than it has been in the last
Yeah,
4 years.
Last year was better.
it was always open, I don't know.
20 and 21 were rough.
But there was never a time it was not open
Right,
before
right.
with volunteers.
But even, we've seen that even with the Legion program, they've had a hard time getting volunteers for their games, which never was the case when it was first
Right.
year.
Right.
I could bank dinner on it, I could walk across the street, grab a hot dog, if I had a late meeting and not have to worry about it, I knew they were always going to be open.
Then the occasional smoked pork sandwich.
Exactly.
And part of
Well, a
that
lot of
That's dessert.
times, it
Dance
was
in
the
it, yeah.
park board that, it was a lot of times it was the park board that would cover, like if we
Yeah,
didn't
'cause
have
if they
somebody,
couldn't
one
find
of us
anybody.
just came and did it,
Yeah.
and I
Right.
don't think any of us expect Trey to do that, that's too much.
Yeah, and we still have, there are, Kelly and Wendy Reichel, Kelly Boongard and Wendy Reichel cover a lot. So there are still volunteers that are filling in that role. But you also have to look at the age groups we're talking about here. Those kids are gonna be out of school soon and out of those programs. Who's next? Who's going to step into that role for Kelly and Wendy when their kids are out of the programs? And they decide that they would like to have their weekends back again. We need to take that kind of thing into consideration.
Well, I think if Park Board were to reach out to the band fundraiser folks that are always looking for a way to raise funds and say, you guys get the month of June, and then look at the football parents group or booster club, and say you guys get the month of July, or whatever that might be, and just have it where it's another individual's or another group's responsibility, it's a great fundraiser for them. I think there's a way to make that fly without it being free labor people that are trying to fill in because no one wants to do it.
Right.
If it's volunteer groups trying to raise funds for their kids' activities, I think you find a lot more people responsive, or at least that's the way it is at football games.
You do.
Or even in weeks too, you know, I mean, if we have enough groups,
Yeah,
I
if you
don't know.
break it
And they're
down into weeks,
responsible
whatever.
for finding volunteers that week
Right.
or filling it themselves.
But I think time frame as opposed to game, simply because stocking that room is on their
Yes.
dime, and
Right.
hauling the stuff in and out is not feasible.
Who stocks for the football and basketball games there?
It's, if the band parents are running it, they bring in their patties and
They're
whatnot.
responsible.
There's, shared corn seed.
Yeah, and I know if we've got stuff left over at the end of the summer, we'll transfer it over to
Right,
Booster
football
club.
boosters, but.
right. But those groups are responsible for procuring their own merch.
Okay,
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Good discussion.
Okay. All right, anything else tonight?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned, 10:51.
Billy, I'm gonna give these back to you and I'll meet you up front, okay?
Okay.